Okay, so we're looking at the skull, and the skull consists of cranial bones and facial bones. The cranial bones start with the suture, the coronal suture. This is the coronal suture here, or frontal suture, and this is the sagittal suture. If you go down to the back, this is going to be the lambdoid suture. So the bones are frontal in the front, parietal, one on either side. The occipital is in the back. And if you look to the side, this is a temporal bone, which is separated by squamous suture from the parietal, and this is the sphenoid. There is one here and one other side, but they are continuous in the middle. So again, this is the coronal suture. In front of it is a frontal, and this is the parietal, two parietals, and this is a temporal squamous suture, and this is the sphenoid bone down here. If you look anteriorly, this is the facial bones. Start from here. This is the nasal bone. This is the maxillary bone, extension from this maxilla, and this fossa down here. This fossa here. This is the lacrimal bone, and this is the lacrimal sac. This is housing the nasolacrimal sac, and this opening here is the opening for the nasolacrimal duct. So if you look at this, never mind less, NMLES. N is the nasal bone, M is the maxillary, L is this fossa here. This fossa is in the lacrimal, and then this is the ethmoid. And if you go all the way to the back, you see these openings. This is the optic foramen all the way back here, and this here is the superior orbital fissure. If you go down here, this is the inferior orbital fissure here. So superior orbital, inferior orbital, and this is the optic foramen. So the bone that's housing all these fissures and foramina, this is the sphenoid bone. So NMLES. This is the orbit again, and this is the supraorbital notch. It can be a notch or a fossa, and this is the infraorbital foramen. This is the supraorbital notch or foramen. This is, here it's notch, but this is the infraorbital foramen. This is the maxillary bone, and these are the maxillary alveoli, which is housing the roots of the teeth. If you move down here, this is the zygomatic bone, and this is this process here is called the temporal process of the zygomatic bone, and this is called zygomatic process of the temporal bone. This is temporal bone, this is zygomatic bone. The zygomatic bone is sending a process, and the temporal bone is sending another process. They're going to meet together to form the whole part here, which is called a zygomatic arch. If you move down here and look at the nose, this is the nasal septum, the bony septum. The cartilaginous is removed, obviously, and this here is the perpendicular plate of ethmoid. And this here is called the vomer bone. So perpendicular plate of ethmoid plus the vomer bone. This is the bony septum. If you look here on either side, you can see this is the inferior nasal concha. This is the middle nasal concha, and you cannot see the superior because it's hiding up, and you can see it only in the other mid-sagittal section. This here again, this is a temporal bone, this is a sphenoid bone, and this is the sphenotemporal suture here, separating those two. And this here is called the external acoustic meatus, and there is another opening on the inside that's called the internal acoustic meatus. This is called the mastoid process, this huge process behind the ear, and this is called the styloid process. If you look in the back here, you can see this is the occipital bone, and you can see that this point here, which is the external occipital protuberance, and there are two nuchal lines, superior nuchal line, inferior nuchal line here. Okay, this is an inferior view of the skull, and you see here this is the palatine bone, which is making the hard palate, and So again, this is the inferior view of the skull, and here you see the palatine bone, which is making the hard palate, the bony part of the hard palate. If you move this way, this is the nasal septum. This is the bony nasal septum. This is the vomer here, and this is the medial pterygoid plate, lateral pterygoid plate. And here are the foramina. You always start with this large foramen magnum, and on either side of the foramen magnum, you see the hypoglossal foramen here, which is, you can see it here. This is the hypoglossal foramen for the hypoglossal nerve. And then if you move further lateral, you can see this foramen here, which is the jugular foramen. And then this here is the carotid canal. So magnum, hypoglossal, which is hiding down there, and then this is the jugular, this is the carotid. And then if you move anteriorly and closer to the middle line, you see this is the foramen lacerum, and it's called lacerum because if any structure, soft tissue, go through it, it will be lacerated. And then you're gonna move to this foramen here. This is foramen ovale, it looks oval, and this is foramen spinosum, looks like a spine going through it. So this is for the base of the skull, and again, this is a mastoid process, this is a styloid process, this is a stylomastoid foramen right in the middle between those two. This is a condylar process. It's a condyle that for articulation with the hyoid and other bones of the neck.